With big changes coming to the Flyers management, with Chuck Fletcher getting fired and Daniel Briere being put in, we've heard a ton of rumors on what the future will be for the Philadelphia Flyers and which players they might not include. And one of the names that has been brought up as a player they couldn't move on from is goaltender Carter Hart. But what are the latest NHL trade rumors surrounding him and the Philadelphia Flyers? And if he is actually traded, what could we see a Carter Hart trade actually look like? Watch till the end for all the news and all the trade rumors, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey content just like this. Now, I am just as surprised as you are that Carter Hart is in trade rumors right now, but it's coming from some pretty reliable sources that potentially for Philadelphia, they might be looking elsewhere in the future of their goaltending. And with, of course, them firing Chuck Fletcher or bringing in Daniel Briere, there's going to be a lot of changes with this Flyers team, even if they might not go pure rebuild. But it looks like Carter Hart might not be a part of their future plans. And this tweet by NHL Watcher really puts it all through for us and gives us a really good idea of what the Flyers are thinking with Carter Hart right now. From an NHL Watcher, Jeff Marek at the intermission says they're starting to wonder about Carter Hart with the emergence of goaltender Samuel Ersson. They can extend Hart, but does he want to spend the prime of his career in what looks to be a complete teardown and rebuild in Philly? Now, I also wanted to bring up what Daniel Briere, of course, interim GM of the Flyers, is saying right now on the potential rebuild. There's no doubt that this is not a quick fix in my mind. It's going to take a while. That said, we're not going to do a full fire sale. We have a lot of good players on this team. And then there was a couple other tweets. Briere on a rebuild, I agree that it's needed, but I wanted to make it clear that rebuild doesn't mean fire sale, and then goes on to say, I'm not afraid to use the word rebuild. And I think what he's saying here is that if there's any players that don't fit the timeline of contention for the Flyers when they are going to be eventually good in maybe 2046 or something at this rate, but all jokes aside, if they're going to be good in 5 years' time, they're likely going to trade players that aren't going to fit that timeline, but they're not going to go complete fire sale where they trade every single piece of value within the organization, like the 2015 Buffalo Sabres, for example. They're not going to go that crazy, but it looks like they're still going to tear a lot of it down and restart from scratch. But then we look on to, of course, Carter Hart, who now is in potential trade rumors here, and it looks like within the organization, according to Jeff Marek, there's been this emergence of Samuel Ersson, and it's kind of maybe made Carter Hart a little bit more expendable. And when you consider, of course, the Flyers and their timeline right now, there is maybe a chance that if Carter Hart wants to re-sign for too much, the Flyers just say no. And then we have this part by Jeff Marek wondering if Carter Hart will want to spend the prime of his career in what looks to be a complete teardown and rebuild in Philly. And that's perfectly a interesting situation to look at, because with Carter Hart, he's now entering his mid-20s, and when he is on his game, he still can be one of the better goaltenders in the league. And considering what Philadelphia is pretty openly doing right now, likely going in that rebuild direction, Carter Hart's next contract is going to be a little bit iffy. I don't know if we'll see much term there. Now, looking at the Flyers cap situation and what they got coming up, you see, of course, their goaltenders in Carter Hart and Felix Sandstrom right now. But with Carter Hart, he's 24 years old and makes $3.979 for this year and next. But importantly, he'll be an RFA, so this won't be a UFA situation for Hart. He won't be going into that, so he won't have free control over his destiny. But I could definitely see a situation where Carter Hart maybe signs like a 2-year contract or something once he's an RFA, and then has the chance to go to UFA afterwards, because it really doesn't feel like for Hart, Hart is truly in it maybe long term, and I could definitely see why. I mean, if I was Carter Hart, I'd be trying to get out of Philly as soon as possible, simply put. Now, looking at Carter Hart is pretty interesting. He'll be turning 25 this August, so again, he's starting to get up there a little bit in age now, at least compared to where he was a few years back with Philadelphia and their time back then. At 6'2", 281 pounds, of course, 48th overall by the Flyers in 2016. You can see the progression here and how topsy-turvy it's been. You can see in his first full year in the NHL, getting 31 games, he got a .917 save percentage, really exploded onto the scene. Then the next year, he continued a pretty solid mark, played a lot more games with 43, and got a .914 save percentage, and was excellent in the playoffs in 2020, a .926 save percentage in 14 games. And considering how young he was, the sky was really the limit for him. But then we started to see it kind of crumble a little bit as Philadelphia started to crumble a little bit. You see in 27 games in 2021, he got an .877 save percentage, was one of the worst goaltenders in the league that year. Then you see in 2022, it was a little bit better, got a little bit better here, it got a little bit more improvement. In 45 games, a .905 save percentage, and this year in 48 games, a 906 save percentage, but you can see that goals against average going quite a bit lower than it was in 2022. But still, at the same time, Carter Hart hasn't been able to reach those elite right lengths, at least not yet. But he's still a player that still has a ton of talent, and if he's given a team that actually has a competent defense and a competent structure, I can see him doing greatly and being among the 920 save percentage guys. But pulling up his numbers on Evolving Hockey and seeing what he's done, I want you to look at the goals saved above expected right here for every single year, going back to 2019 where his career really started. First, he put up a minus 2.7 goals saved above expected, which of course is if you had a 0 would be the NHL average. Then in 2020, we really saw him jump up though with those bigger games, getting a plus 7.25, really excellent numbers there. Then though in 2021, as his save percentage dropped, a lot of it was also because of his poor performance and poor goals saved above expected, a minus 24 being one of the worst goalies in the league that year. In 2022, it did get better, a minus 7, but still not really where you want to have it be. But this year is where we really started to see Hart get back to that great level at a plus 9.25, having the best season of his career. Even if this save percentage might not show it, from what he's had to work with, the workload he's had this year, he's still been exceptional. And this is, of course, with the Flyers defense being what it is. Now, when talking about a potential fit for Carter Hart, it's pretty interesting because we could see a trade, but we also could see him maybe just sign somewhere else if he does sign that couple-year deal and then going on a UFA in free agency. So there's always the potential of that. But in terms of who could actually trade for him, I think there's a couple of teams that make a lot of sense. One is the Montreal Canadiens, and it really does depend on what happens these next couple of years for them, because as you see in their goaltending situation right now, you got Sam Montembeault likely being the guy of the future as he's playing right now. We don't know whether that play will translate onto next season and then the one after that and everything, and if he'll be the actual future starter of the Habs as they start to get a lot better too, once they start to turn that corner, if he'll truly be the guy there. That's the big question. He's done great this year, but we've also heard a ton about Montreal wanting to improve still that organizational depth, and Ken Hughes wanting to trade for a young goaltender. They got Jacob Dobesh doing some pretty amazing things in Ohio State right now as an NCAA goaltender at 21 years old. So if they do see him as the future, then maybe Carter Hart isn't that guy. Maybe they rock with Montembeault and Dobesh for the future. But again, we heard a lot about the Habs wanting to trade for a young goaltender. Carter Hart would obviously fit that bill. Another team that maybe could make sense is the Seattle Kraken. They've obviously been frustrated with their goaltending so far in their franchise history. Grubauer, Martin Jones, they've gone through a ton of different guys. Nobody has really truly excelled in that position, but defensively, the Kraken are much better all around than Philadelphia, and I think Carter Hart would be really interesting there. Now, I think the only thing that really holds it back is that Seattle doesn't have a ton of fantastic young options because they were literally just born and they don't have that much draft capital accumulated within the system. That might be the only thing that really holds it back. But I could also see Seattle being another team that goes in free agency and gets it, just like they did with Grubauer. Though, hopefully for Seattle, it works a lot better than the Grubauer signing did. But I don't even know what to think about the cost if he is to go via trade. Maybe a first-round pick, a top prospect, and maybe a solid young forward, perhaps, something like that. If the Flyers are truly comfortable with having Samuel Ersson as the next future guy, then I'm not sure they really ask for a young goaltender back. Maybe they do. We'll have to wait and see. But I think that would kind of be the price of what we see with Hart, especially if the Flyers aren't really interested or able to sign him long term. That could be what really makes or breaks this whole situation. But let me know, what do you guys think about the Philadelphia Flyers and them potentially trading a player like Carter Hart? Where could you see him going? What team do you see him getting traded to or signing in free agency with? Let us know down below. And what do you think a Carter Hart trade could actually look like? Let us know, and of course, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell for more hockey trade rumor content just like this, and share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day, and goodbye.